Hello and well met. This is Laren with the Fantasy Grounds Academy. I'm going to take a look at some resources and do a map that is based on the Mine of Phandelver setting in the D&D 5e rule set. Most of these concepts are true to most of the 5th edition content that's out there. So we have some third-party content that's from the DM's Guild. We have some of the official content. We have Fantasy Grounds, Unity platform, and also some things from an artist by the name of Kris McDermott from Gametile Warehouse 2020. He's created basically a inspired map set under the moniker of Wildershire, which is on his website. I will provide links for that at the end of this particular video event. But without further ado, we're going to actually get into some of the content that's available in Fantasy Grounds. And this isn't just maps, this is modules and all kinds of supplemental things that can help add immersion, and it also will help add more content for anything that you're trying to run. So in this case, for Mine of Phandelver, it's normally just a self-contained module. So in my library in Fantasy Grounds, I'm going to open up this particular module. This is the Mine of Phandelver module. It's self-contained. It has pre-generated characters that you can run right off the get-go. So if you want to add these to your campaign, you just come up to the pre-gen characters area, which is easier to find them this way. And then you would open up your character area under player. And you can add the pre-gens or the generated characters that come with this module. There's not too many out there that do this. So you have Mine of Phandelver. You have the D&D Essentials starter set, which actually kind of ties in with Lost Mine, so you might want to get that later. So if you want to adventure beyond the core module. And then you have these pre-gens that come with it, which are kind of balanced, and the story behind these individuals is part of the story of the region, so they kind of fit in. But if you really want to make characters and such, you're probably going to have to get the player's handbook and some of the other character creation books. But I just have the bestiary, the data, and the magic items loaded, which I really don't need, but it helps when you're doing spells and such for parsing and looking up things in Fantasy Grounds. And then I have a module called Fellowship of Phandalin, which are the actual pre-generated characters that are not part of the setting as far as the standard goes. So someone's gone out and made all of the NPCs into player characters and at different levels. So you have Sildar Hallwinter at up to 5th level. So if you want to use those particular NPCs as characters, you can. And it has it set up to where it's like that. So that's really cool. And it also comes with maps and such. So there's a screenshot of what it would look like in Fantasy Grounds. There's the cover itself. So it's kind of a cool thing. You have a way to have all the characters already built, and you can add these in to your existing campaign, which is really nice. But for the pre-gens, I can just click on these little buttons here, and that will add them to the current campaign. And same thing with this Fellowship of Phandalin. If I wanted to, I could grab these and add them. They also created some NPCs, which are basically things that are not as common, but these are pits and traps, which is really useful because a lot of this isn't coded or put into Fantasy Grounds format. You have the Warhorse, which could be used as the horses that are basically killed in the first part of this adventure. So there's a lot of good, helpful, and qualifying content in this module for the DM's Guild, which is really nice. And then you have the monster loot, which this covers the times when you don't have the assets created for the monsters that might have loot. So these are basically parcels, and they're based off of every creature type, or most of the creature types that are in the actual module. So there's the bugbear. If you open that up, they have their equipment, and they might have some coins depending on what they are. So here's Neznar, the black spider. So if you look at him, he's got his staff here, the spider staff. So these are things that might be missing or not included with the Fantasy Grounds edition. So that's really nice. Here's the flame skull. So he has treasure as well. So it's just a matter of convenience that people have created this content for. So that's really useful. Then there's the Sidekicks of Phandelver, which is basically a bunch of NPCs. You can use these. There's Milk the Goblin. If you need to use that, there's a wolf here. There are some other really nice things here for that. So this is kind of what helps you bring this to light. So the summary of this is that the sidekicks are basically adventures, but they're sidekick versions. So they're kind of a little bit more toned down, but you can do different things and apply these. So there's Garrett Goodbarrel. He's a cleric that's able to heal. Gundren is one of the patrons. He's a dwarf experience in dungeon navigation. There's Milk the Goblin, an agile and wild humanoid. You have Sildar, an expert warrior, and you have a wolf, which is a trainable predator. So you can decide if you want to allow these to be used in your campaign. So you don't have to use this stuff. But this is really neat. This is what helps you when you're running the campaign. And then there's the tavern keeping, which is a module that is created for the Stonehill Inn. And this is a pretty cool little supplement that will help you with trying to run that. So in this particular module, you have different bits of content here. So you have this image here. You have the different contents. And then it talks about the Fantasy Grounds conversion part of it. So those are just the credits. But when you get it to the actual Sleeping Giant Inn, you get a map. You get some labeled areas. So if you didn't want to use the black and white map that's provided here, which I think is fine, you can also use other maps. And what I mean by other maps is I actually have a map here that's from the Lost Mine of Phandelver categories. And what that does is it makes it so that you can use this content in addition to what you're already given in the adventure. So that's something that you might want to look at. But these are just some general features here. You can restore the tavern. It tells you how much it costs. You can maintain it. Tells you that. So it's based off of some of the rules that come out of the rule books. So, and then there's some frequent patrons that go in there.
Hey, is there a reason?
So that's just something that you can take a look at if you're interested in. So that is just a kind of an overview of just some of the content that's out there. There's more. There's a notice boards one that I was looking at where you can get small adventures in Phandalin. There's some other maps, alternative maps that are put out by other people. But today I want to take a look at the maps that come basically, that you don't have a map that comes with Phandelver that details all of the buildings. So if you go into the reference manual, and we're going to look at the actual Stonehill Inn. So let's take a look at that. So if you were going to use that, here's the Stonehill Inn. It talks about it, but it doesn't really give you a whole lot of information. There's a link there for the Shrine of Luck that's inside. But there, in this case, we're going to do the Sleeping Giant. So there's another inn called the Sleeping Giant. And it's not really as detailed as you would want sometimes. So the Sleeping Giant is just one of the buildings that's in Lost Mine that's not fully detailed. So if we go to Phandalin, the town, let's see what we have for a map there. So let's see. I want to go to images and maps. So this is what comes with the actual content from the Lost Mine. So if we go to the campaign and we take a look at the images, you can pull up the images section here, and we'll look at the maps that come with Lost Mine of Phandelver. So let's see what we got here. So there's the artwork. There's the maps. And these are all the different maps. So we have a player map of Phandalin right here. And if you open this up, you don't necessarily have all these buildings. You don't necessarily have all the maps and such for them. A lot of them are just story entries, and you just kind of make these up. Theater of the Mind. So here's Baratheon's Provisions. If you pop that open, there's an NPC, a parcel, a quest, but you don't see any maps here. So Kris has went ahead and made all those maps for these different buildings just in case. Here's the Shrine of Luck, which is close to the Stonehill Inn. Here is the Lion Shield Coster. There's a Sleeping Giant right here. So this is the map that you get. Basically, it's just a place where the ruffians hang out. It's a rundown tap house. It's dirty, dangerous. It's a watering hole at the end of Phandelver's main street. It is frequented by the Red Brand thugs, and it's operated by a surly female dwarf named Grista. If the characters choose to visit the place, you run this Phandelver encounter for the Red Brand ruffians, and when you open this up, it gives you the encounter. There is a map, an encounter map that comes with this, but it's not that detailed, and it's quite often it's not easy to find. You have to go online and look for something. There's a link here. There's some areas where there's maps that are lacking, and they've already been created on the DM's Guild, but you can also create your own in Fantasy Ground. So there's a lot of things, little holes that are missing in a lot of these adventures that kind of give it a little bit of flexibility so you can do your own thing, so you're not just getting everything handed to you. So there are some things that you have to do on your own. So with that in mind, I'm actually going to pull up an image that comes from Kris's map pack. And if you buy it off of his store, the images are very high quality. They're PNG files. But the problem with them is that, I wouldn't say it's a problem, but one of the things you have to be careful with is that the files are really big. So I had to convert those, which is something that you'll have to get used to doing if you're going to use custom maps. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up the assets folder. And in the assets folder on the back end where the folder is, I actually added these images manually. And then I hit the refresh button. And if you go to the campaign folder, which is the folder that's part of this particular campaign, it will pull up the actual maps that I've added. And these are the maps that are in the actual adventure that don't come with the regular adventure itself, but they're mentioned in here, and there's encounters there, but there's no maps for all of them. So this is a nice way to add these maps in case you want to continue your adventures or you don't have time to make your own. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up this. There's the Stonehill Inn. I want to get the Sleeping Giant. So here's a version of the Sleeping Giant that Kris has made that is not included in the regular adventure. So if you have something like this in the adventure, you can actually set this up to use line of sight. So I'm going to do that. So I can set this as a background image, or I can create an image record. So whenever you do image records, if you're adding it to your campaign, what you want to do is bring up your images area and then create a new group. So I'm just going to create a group. Right now it's called Group 1. So I'm going to hit Edit, and I'm going to call this LMoP Advanced, because that's kind of what we're kind of taking the adventure to a little bit more advanced level. So Lost Mine of Phandelver Advanced Maps, we'll say, and then I'll go ahead and get out of the edit mode, and then I will go to Lost Mine to that. So this is the group. So now that I have that, I can take and import all of the assets from the campaign folder. So I'm going to do that now by clicking Create from Campaign Assets. And then it'll give you a warning. Are you sure you want to do it? I'm going to say, yep. So that brings in all the maps and images that I have imported. This is nice when you do this ahead of time, and then you can just import them at once instead of dragging them over one at a time. So I want to go ahead and pull up the Sleeping Giant. And once I've done that, I'm going to expand this out so I can see it more. And I'm going to actually bookmark this map here because I want to bring this up from time to time. That comes with the adventure. The next thing is I want to make sure that I can see the map. So I want to expand this out, and I will use the tool, you can right click and go to view, and you can do zoom to fill or zoom to fit. Zoom to fill kind of brings it all the way to the edge. Zoom to fit kind of brings it like that. So it depends on what you need, but I think putting it to zoom to fit is going to fit this window space. So if you need to do any very essential editing and such, you'll have to zoom in. But I want to go ahead and make this area as big as I can without distorting, and then I'll right click, and then you can do the zoom to fit or zoom to fill, and then zoom out a little so you don't get messed up. You just use the mouse wheel. Click on the map anywhere and just scroll in and out with the mouse wheel. So that's the first step. The other thing I want to look at is the map that came with the other content, just in case there's some use there. So if I go to the images and maps, again in campaign folder, and then I go to the, the Tavern of the Sleeping Giant Inn, you have these different images. So we might be able to use some of these. So here's a sign that says it's under new management, welcomes your patronage. So we might be able to link that to this map later to use. There's a back page of the module itself. There's a picture of a beer barrel, which could be like the new logo. This is the author's mark. That's the cover. There's your inside cover with one of the patrons or the proprietor. There's a magic items template that shows you how that works. And then there's the deed. So maybe this would just be like your content that you would use to, to basically make this something that you can use to, like a contract. So you can see the map's a little bit different, that each artist has their own idea of what the map should look like, but I think I'm going to use the one that Kris made. I like this one a little better, but this one over here isn't bad too. You can use this if you have to, but I'd prefer to use this more colorful map. But if you like the black and white maps, like the old school, that's fine with that too. And then you have the actual map itself. The other thing was a deed, so this is a map. It doesn't have those folds in it. So this is the actual image, a little bit more clear. So you can see they both chose to render this a little bit differently in their own creation. So that's kind of cool. So I'm going to go ahead and put the line of sight on this map. This map over here, you can use this as maybe this was the old layout or a blueprint that was suggested but never happened. I mean, you could do all kinds of things. So I'm going to go ahead and close all this for right now. And then I want to take and center this map a little better so that we can adjust if we need to. And one of the things that helps is if you support the artists that make these things, you're going to get a pretty good idea of the scale. And also in this case, he's made these maps so they don't have any grids on them, which is very helpful because when they have grids painted on them, it can be a real pain in the butt to try to line up the grid. So that's the first thing we're going to do is put the grid on. So if I click on the grid tool on the far right, and then I click on the toggle visibility, it's default at 50 by 50. That's 50 pixels or little dots per square. So if I click on that, the visibility, it should come up. Let's see what happened. Well, I'm going to change the opacity. I'm not sure what happened, but I'm going to close the map temporarily and then reopen it. So I don't know what happened with the grid, but I'll go ahead and close it and then reopen it. Okay, and then go to the grid, toggle the visibility. Yeah, I'm not sure, but see, it's really small because the scale isn't proper. So when I zoom in, that's where you can actually see the grid. So this is way too finite. This is not going to work. So I believe that these maps were 300 by 300. Yeah, so that's closer to what the scale truly is. And as you can see, that even with this being converted as a JPEG, when you go into the view it's not too bad. It still looks really good. And then you can take and move these around as you can see fit. So if I hold on to this, select this layer and go to the layer tool, I can actually grab this and place it. And so that this way the corners are lining up with the actual grid. And that's what you want to see. So there's your grid. Now I noticed that this grid is a little bit too bright, so you can change the color if you want. So if I go to the grid tool and I change the tint, I'm going to go to more of a yellow, and then I'm going to turn down the opacity a little bit. This way it's not too bright or too crazy. If you wanted to theme the map to more of the color of the the background, if you wanted to theme these particular tints, with the grid, you can take the color picker and change this and use this color picker and select some of the colors on the map. So if maybe you wanted this light green, you can do that. It was kind of themes it with the actual images that are in the map. So that's kind of a cool thing to do if you're into that. So there we go. So there's the grid. So that's actually the first thing that we want to do with any given map. If you notice that some of these actual locations are not centered, so if you wanted to, you can move the grid a little bit and kind of get it more centered on the actual image. So if you go to this position tool, you can nudge this up or down. So if you come up here and you move this up, you can get these lines to kind of more end up in the more of the middle instead of somewhere else. And then as you can see, it's not totally square here, so it just depends on what your needs are. You could also turn this down a little if you wanted to. Kind of make it more or make it larger if you want. But this is the way it was set up to be, is this kind of the squared area, and that takes care of that. So it doesn't have to be perfectly square, but I'm just letting you know you can make fine adjustments if you need to. So that's pretty much centered as far as the map goes with the grid. So if you look up here in this corner, you can see that it's pretty lined up pretty well. So again, this is the Sleeping Giant Inn, the rundown facility that you come across when you fight or get ready to fight the red brand. So this might be something that happens after. You might inherit this place and get it fixed up. Who knows? But this is helpful for when you are trying to bring in your own content. So this is basically this is the map. Now I'm going to start thinking about how do I want to attack it. So generally what happens is people get very ambitious and they just start doing things. It's better if you actually take the time, take a look at what you want to do. Really take a look at the map. So we have some terrain out here. So I'm definitely going to put a little bit of terrain around these trees. I might put some terrain around these walls, but if I do that, then you won't be able to see. So that would imply that these walls are really tall. I don't think they're that tall, so I probably won't do that, but you could. There's some barrels out here, some spider webs, so there's all kinds of little objects here that you could technically change. So one of the first things I'm going to do is the terrain tool. So if I switch over to the line of sight tool, I'm going to click on this little tree terrain and then the line tool. And all I'm going to do is just click around these bushes and trees so that I have a little bit of terrain. So if I just click here and here, I'm not really going to go all the way to the edge. I think that's something that people think you have to do. You don't. You just click in or around near the tops of these trees, and that actually looks better in the long run, because when you're viewing this as a player, you're not seeing a big black blob. You actually get to see part of the tree. So I'm going to just take the very tops of these trees and kind of click around the very tops or the top boughs of the tree. That way you're not covering everything up. And that's all you really have to do with some of these features, is just kind of go around and just lightly put some stuff here. So here's a little back area. So maybe that's a pond or something back here. So what I'm going to do is just click on some of this tree here. This is a lot taller tree, but it's like I said, you don't have to have every little square inch covered, just so it has a little bit of that shadow that's put in there. And then these trees on the edge would be a little tricky, so I'm going to go ahead and do this now. So just click there on the left and click down here at the bottom, and then just kind of lightly go along here and just kind of give you an impression that these are higher up than the rest of the bushes and the trees. and it gives the players a sense of the dynamic of the tree height. So like these branches down here might be a little lower. These might just be bushes, so they don't really necessarily have to be taller. And then when you come up here towards the top, there are some trees up here, but they may not be as tall or as high up. So it's up to you how you want that to look. And I'm going to come back down here in the color in the corner here and do the same thing for this tree here. So I'll leave the bottom boughs open and exposed and just kind of click around, get the very tops of these trees covered. So it kind of gives you that perception of height, but it's not going to block the entire tree. That's something you want to try to avoid with these maps when it comes to terrain, because you don't want to exclude the detail of the map, because then it's no point in having the map if all you have is a big black blob. So that's something that people are newer to Fantasy Grounds. When you start doing this, you'll see what I mean. It kind of makes the map a little less immersive if you have it completely covered. So these are just things that I learned the hard way, actually, by doing this. Just playing with the map tool and kind of getting used to it, and then, trying to consider what needs to be actually shown as part of this or not. So here's a big bush here that's growing on the side of the building. It doesn't necessarily need line of sight. So those are things that you have to consider. And then like I said, I was going to do these rock walls, but I don't think I need to do that. They might cast shadows, but they shouldn't block vision. So that's what I might do, is put a shadow caster on these rocks. So that'll be my next step, is now that I have those, what I'll do is, this is a platform that comes up. So this might be terrain if it's tall enough. And as you can see, you got like 3 or 4 stairs. So that might be about 5 feet up in the air. So you might want to put a terrain feature up here on the top, so that when they get up there, they can actually see. So you can put a terrain feature on there if you want. Also, like this part of this rooftop here is a terrain feature, so you could put that on there. So if I go to the terrain tool and just click on the very corners of this eave here, this is just something that overhangs the side of the building. So it doesn't need a lot of detail, but there in case, so you don't actually see through it. There you go. And like I said, this deck, it doesn't really need to have the terrain feature, but if you wanted to, there's no problem with that. So it just depends on your interpretation. FGA presents. Yeah, thanks, Bruno. Nice to see you. No, I'm not really making maps. I'm really just trying to show how the line of sight works. And this is something that people struggle with, so I do these quite a bit. This map was actually made by Kris from Gametile Warehouse, but the first thing I'm doing right now is putting the terrain on the maps. So the walls here aren't really going to block vision, but they will block light. So what I'm going to do is go to the shadow caster, and I'm going to just kind of trace around, just around the edges, but not too close to the edge, so we can still see some of the features, and just kind of click around here and kind of give the players the idea that this is a feature that is blocking light a little bit, but it's not necessarily blocking vision. So these will create or cast shadows, but it won't necessarily block the players from seeing what's inside. So that's kind of a difference there in how this works. So this isn't really terrain, but it's going to block some of the light that comes from the ambient outdoors light. So that's why I'm doing this. So I'm going to just kind of create this illusion that there's depth here and height. So this is something that you could do to help make this look more realistic. And as you see, it kind of messed up there. No big deal. So I'll just drag this over here. And that's all I need to do. I don't worry about, it doesn't have to be perfect. So when you're done creating your terrain, you can go back and make adjustments. There's no reason why you want to keep flipping back and forth in the tool. You just do this at the end when you're done. So like if you didn't like where you place these points, you can certainly go back and make adjustments. But I suggest you do that once you get everything placed. That way you're not switching back and forth inside of the tool. So I'm going to do a little bit more of the shadow casting here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw around here. And when I bring up the ambient light, I'm going to follow the shadow that's already put into the map. So you see Kris has already kind of put some of this shadowing in here. So I'm going to try to shadow follow some of that shadowing here. It's coming at this angle. So I'll do that when we get to the ambient part. So just kind of going through, got the line tool. And again, I'm just going to create this wall here that's going to sort of emulate having the shadow cast by sun, but it's not going to block the light, or it's not going to block the vision of the player. So that's important to know that. So that is this part. And you'll notice that, I'm not perfectly putting it around the edge, just kind of loosely following the contour of the wall. So that way, when the shadow's cast, you can still see part of the wall structure and you're not getting blocked out or anything. So this is just kind of a way to make things a little easier to realize that there's a wall here, but you're not blocking it from the players. So this little chunk of stone, I'll do the same thing. I'm just going to come around here, put shadow cast on it. So it's just going to cast shadow, but it's not going to break the immersion here. And you might do that with these barrels. So these barrels, even though they're not going to be hidden, you could take the ellipse tool and just kind of draw, something like that around these barrels. And again, I'm not using the terrain tool. I'm using the shadow caster. So the shadow caster helps you cast shadows without blocking the vision. So then if you want to select these, you can move them. So I just double clicked on the points and then just left click and drag, and that will allow you to move these. So there you go. So these are just some little tips that you'll learn along the way as you go. So once you have most of your terrain set, then you can go back and start putting your walls in. This is just what I chose to do for completeness. And now if I had any other adjustments I wanted to make, this would be a good time to do it. So if I come through here, make a little bit more fine adjustments, if you want to follow the contour a little bit better, or maybe you got too close to the edge, whatever the reason might be, that you can do that at this point. So that's why I don't want to switch back and forth between the tools. The magic of occluders, that's right. So now what we're going to do is take and put in the line of sight itself for the walls. So there is something that you need to understand when you're doing that. So once we get the line of sight up, we're going to take care of the ambient light outside and make sure that it's not shining into the building. So that's something that you're going to have to get used to. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in all of these different rectangles. I'm not going to worry about going beyond the lines, because that's where a lot of people get kind of confused and messed up. You don't have to go right to the edge. I'm just going to go right in the center and just draw like some rectangles in here. So it'd be real easy. And just make sure they overlap, that they connect a little. So I'm going to go to the square tool and the wall tool. All I'm going to do is find an area that's close, and I'm just going to left click and drag until I get to a decent point in this map, and then I'll just let go once I get it centered a little bit more. And there we go. That's the first part of it, really simple. Now the next thing I'm going to do is similar. I'm going to take and put in this particular room here with just one big rectangle. So what I can do is click on this particular edge. It'll snap to grid. But as you can see, it kind of goes past this area, so I don't want to do that. So I'll hit Control Z. So I'm going to draw my own rectangle and just kind of follow this, but use that as a guide, but then come through here and kind of make my own thing. So that's pretty close to where I wanted it. So these will be intersected, and those. So that's what I wanted, just like that. And you'll have these little intersection points, which are good. You don't have to worry too much about that. You can go back and clean those up. So next thing, same thing here. It's like storage area. There's a door right here. So I'm just going to do this left click and drag thing. And I don't mind if it's a little bit further out. because I want to create those intersections here. That's important. So that's pretty much the majority of the line work here. There's no secret doors or anything, so I don't have to worry about that. And now I'm going to put in the doorways and the windows. So I'm not even going to worry about the lines yet. I can go back and clean those up later. So there's a door here and another door. So there's at least 2 doors that I can tell. This might be a window, so I don't need to worry about that. This is a window. So, and then we have a window down here, it looks like. Yeah. So just a few doors and a few windows. No big deal. So let's start with the doors first. So the doors, I want to make sure I'm in the rectangle tool and the door tool. And all I'm going to do is just left click and drag and hold this and just kind of let it go. I don't mind if it's a little bit bigger because it's easier to click on when you're zoomed way out. If you have it real thin, it's going to be hard to click on it. And then this is an actual, probably a doorway or a walkway in here. So I'm just going to create this as an area that you can get into, but it might be a secret door. So let's hold off on that and let's put a secret door in here. Once we get the lines in, I want to make sure I get rid of this extra line before I start doing that, but it's not that big of a deal. I can actually go to the secret door, the toggleable wall, and use this area as a secret door to go into the storeroom back here. And this might be where the hideout location is anyway, so maybe there's the trap doors here. So what I'll do is I will draw another line, a wall, and the reason I'm going to do that is so you can hide the secret door. So I'm just going to click outside and hold shift, which makes a straight line, and then just double click, and that made the intersection that I wanted. And you can see these little extra lines here. We can get rid of those later. So that's that, and now I'm going to put the secret door in. So I'm going to go to secret door, and we're going to put that right in this area here. So I'm going to click here and drag it. Oops. Want to be in the square tool. Okay, so we're in the secret door area, so just kind of come back through here, and that's where the secret door is going to be. So that'll be cool. And now for the window tool, same thing. So go to the windows, and we're just going to drag and drop these right here in these little portals. So we have portals for the windows. And you can see I'm not really that accurate. I mean, it's not going to break anything. It's not that big of a deal. Here's another window, smaller one. And then we have a window down here and another door. So there's some things to look at. So here's another window. It's a covered window. And another one down here. And another window. So there we go. So there's our windows. Now I'm missing a door down here, so I want to put the door in. So I will go back to the door tool, and I'm in the rectangle tool, and I'm just going to put the door in. It's no big deal. You don't have to keep switching back and forth between different tools, and that's kind of what I'm trying to teach here, unless you miss something. Like I just missed this window here, so I want to go to the window tool again and draw that in, and then I'll take a quick look at the map before I switch over. So I think I got all the windows, got all the doors, I got a secret door here, there's the bar. So what I might do with the bar is instead of putting terrain on it, I might actually put a shadow caster. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So go to the line tool and just kind of click around the inside here. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then just use that as a way to show where the bar is. So when candles and such are lit, it kind of casts a shadow back there. That way rogue can hide behind that or something like that. So there's little things you can do to kind of make these things interesting. And same thing back here. You could put shadow cast like we did before. You can use a circle tool and just kind of left click and drag this out, left click, drag this out. So if you wanted to have people hide behind these barrels, you could. And then go back to the selection tool, double click, and then move it into place. And then if, like in this case, I think I went a little bit too big. So if you wanted to go back and fix that, you can just single click and pull these points in if you think they're too big. So that could be a way to fix something that you've kind of drawn too far out. So same thing with this. I can pull these points in a little bit more so they're not as obnoxious. There we go. So that kind of fixes it. So there we go. So not too bad. So the next step is to do the cleanup, like all the excess stuff that you want to get rid of. So that helps you so you're not constantly going back and forth and mixing these changes. So I'm going to go to the wall tool. I'm going to click on the line tool and just drag and drop a line through here. And I'm going to do that for all the windows and the doors and the portals. This way I don't have to keep switching back and forth. And what I'm going to do is leave it so where I can take and remove that easier without trying to do it manually. So this is just a really quick and easy way to do this. So I might do something here, but just pull in these lines where I don't have to do anything with that. And then there's another doorway and a window that I want to look at. So here's another door. So I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm just going to systematically go through everything and take a look at what I need to do. So these are just portals and windows and doors. So that's all I'm working on right now. Is I'm trying to put this line through here so that later on when I need to, it's easier for me to delete that center line, get rid of it. And then again, this is going to be removed. So we'll take this and that. Go. So I think I got most of them. Yep. Okay, so here's how I'm going to handle this. So starting from the top, I'm in the selection tool. You double click on the center, which selects all these different points, hit delete, and then single click and hit delete again, and that gets rid of the center line. So that's the way you can do this. If you highlight all these and hit delete, you can also do that too. But sometimes it will delete the other line, so you got to be careful with that. But you can do that certainly if you're careful and it doesn't delete the other lines on either side. So there's a couple ways you can do that. You can highlight all the points and delete them, or you can do the method I showed. So these lines, I'm just going to move them in. I don't have to. Oops. I don't have to do anything particular. Just drag it in, just like that. Same thing down here. If you left click and drag, you can highlight all three of those points. Hit delete, it gets rid of them. So that is something that is really simple to do and doesn't take as long. Again, there's some more of that. Now, in this particular area, there's a gap here between this door and the walls and such as far as this eave goes. So if I want to, I can just take this and move it to where it intersects right there. And it's not that big of a deal anyways, but if you had to, you can move that back. See, it's actually not even part of it. So you go like that, that's when you're actually on the line. So these are the little fine editing things you can do. And the same thing here, it's already past that. So just bring that over. And it just kind of butts it up with the rest of it. And then if you wanted to fix this corner, you can pull it in a little bit so it's not outside. So there's your fine adjustments. You do this after you've done all of your editing for your lines and such. So that's kind of what saves you time, is by doing it like this. So again, I'm just highlighting these points and hitting delete. Just doing a left click and drag, and that'll bring those past. So this looks like a doorknob. So maybe this was a back door at one point. So what I'm going to do with this is probably make a door, but keep it locked. So that might have been like a little back door at one time. Maybe there was a porch that rotted. So I will go back to the door tool and rectangle. And it's going to draw this little door in here. And this wasn't meant for anything but probably coal, or wasn't really meant for people to go in and out of. It's more like a way to service this area in the back. And then if you go to the line tool and create a little line here, oops, wrong tool. So you got to make sure you're in the right tool. So that. Now go back to selection and delete. So this is where you can save a lot of time if you're careful with what you're doing. So I just deleted that extra line that we didn't need. And that would also be true. I want to look at where this ends up before I get rid of it. So yeah, we don't need this line right here. So I can take this, put a line through it, double click, hit that. So I just got rid of that segment. Says we don't need an extra segment in there. And then if you really wanted to, you could take this line and pull it in with this one. So that would make that to where it fits there. But you may not want to do it on this side. Well, let's see what happens. So I want to take all of these points here. I'm going to double click and then delete. I'm going to delete this line and this line. So that keeps this all together. So then we could take these points here, these extra ones, and just drag them into the center. Just like that. That cleans it up. There's no hassle. And if you wanted the door a little bit smaller, you can actually bring this in a little bit. But like I said, you want to leave these kind of big because it's hard to click on them if you have the map zoomed out. So there's basically the adjustments that we're making right now. So here's a little bit of line that went over. So we just click that. We don't have to keep that line. The secret door is a little bit tougher to handle. I'll show you how to do this. So right now, I'm just getting rid of the segments that we don't need anymore. So that is this line here. When I delete that, it also deletes the segments that we don't need. So now that we have these little things cleaned up where we don't have these overhangs, now the secret door, we have to blend it in with the wall more. So first thing I'm going to do is highlight all of these points by double clicking on the delete key, and then just single click and delete on each one of these lines to get rid of the extra lines. Now all I have to do is bring in this blue wall by selecting the corner and just bringing it into where the lines connect, or where the vertices are. And what that does is it cleans it up and it blends it in with the wall so you can't tell. And then for the edges here, these have to connect. So I'm just going to click on the terrain tool, the line, and just click on this point and double click here. And that puts in that joining line so that when the line of sight goes in there, it's not going to shine through the wall. So that should be most of it. I think I've got a majority of that stuff figured out. So there we go. So that is all of the door occluders and such. Here's a secret door. So that's just a really quick and dirty way to clean this up. Like I said, you don't really need to change much once you have the main core laid out, and then you go back and fix everything. So that's something you could do after the fact. So if I wanted to extend these lines a little bit, back them up, I could do that just so it's not touching. So that's what I'm doing. Just taking these and moving them back. The way it's not too crazy. There we go. So that is part of making this map kind of interesting. Now I want to put a secret door in here, an asset. So right now I have the line of sight put in, and I want to lock the map and make sure that I don't accidentally move it. And then on this table here, I might put an occluder like a shadow caster. So if I go to the shadow caster and go to the rectangle tool, I can take this, left click, and kind of drag it in the center. That helps with that. And then you could do the same thing with the tables if you really wanted to. I don't want to do too many. It gets kind of ridiculous after a while. But that is basically the majority of this, is that you're just taking and adding in little details that might come up in game that you might want to use. So here's a crate. I'm going to think that it's kind of rather tall, like at least up to your chest or so. So I'm going to take the chest and move the lines on it if I need to, just kind of give you an idea of what's going on, and it gives a little shadow. So there we go. That's pretty much it. Now I'm going to turn on the line of sight tool and take a look at what we have. So if you go through here, that's what the players will see if they don't have any vision. If you come up like this is what you're going to see as the GM. So I don't know if there's any candles or anything in here, but I'm going to have to add some light. And then I don't want the outside to influence the inside. So I'm going to take one of the players, or a couple of them, and put them on the combat tracker, which is important. So when you're using Fantasy Grounds and you want to check things out, you want to make sure that you actually have something on the combat tracker so you can check things out. So here's the dwarf, he has dark vision, and here's the fighter. So when I bring these guys onto the map, let's see. Nope, they need to have tokens, so that's one thing that can mess up your map, is if you don't have any sort of token. So I'm going to go to the Fantasy Grounds Fantasy folder here and pick a couple out. So this helps with the actual checking the map, because then you'll be able to see your line of sight and how it works. So as I'm doing that, we're kind of taking this map that's made for the sleeping giant in Phandalin and putting line of sight and such in there. And this will be a place that players can invest in. So this is a folk hero. So there's a woman in here that I will use. Let's see. There she goes. And then for the cleric, for his token, I will use, again, I'm going to use the portraits. Go to Fantasy Grounds Fantasy, and then there's a dwarven one that I always use. So that'll be fun to check out once I get that open. So these are just fine points of adding more things to a campaign or to a setting. That's the main reason I'm doing this, to show you there's more resources out there, and that putting the maps together in Fantasy Grounds, if you don't have a grid on there, are not too bad. You just have to spend a lot of time on it. It may not be worth it, but it just depends. So I'm going to drag these two onto the map. And as you can see here, this cleric, he has dark vision, or this fighter does not. So I'm going to change the lighting outside. So the outside lighting, I'm going to go to ambient lighting. Right now it's set at nighttime, so I'm going to set it to daytime. So ambient preset here will be daytime or sunlight. That way it actually looks like it's sunny out. And then the shadows, like I said, I was going to try to follow some of the existing shadows. So I want to take this and move the shadow direction a little bit. There we go. And then the length of the shadow, maybe just 4 or 2 or 5, something like that. That way it's not too crazy. I always found that anything under 10, it usually looks pretty good. And then after that, you need to change the lighting that's going to affect this building. So what you need to do is put a mask on, which will give us the ability to hide this indoor area from the outside. So I'm going to put a mask on here. So if I left click and drag, that will put the mask in here. And what that does is it keeps the inside from the outside for lighting. You don't want the lighting to come in and wreck the line of sight that's inside the building. There we go. So now when I go to the player view, that's what they're going to see. And it doesn't show the indoor layers. So if I come up with this cleric and I click on open the door, it comes in. There's the interior. Now this character doesn't have any light, so I want to give her a candle. So you can do that in Fantasy Grounds by clicking on the effects, drag the candle onto her token, and that gives her a little bit of token light there. So now when she moves in, she has this little candle area she can see. That's how you check the line of sight. You got to make sure you're selecting the correct token for the correct vision. See, there's the windows are showing. You can't see the secret door, which is nice. So we can just say they're sitting around in the dark. So I'm going to temporarily turn this off and turn off all the other lighting. And then I'm going to put in some lighting here on the walls or something like that. But I also want to put in the secret door tile for the basement. So let's take a look at hatch. So I want to go to the library, in this case, the assets. And then I want to look up a candle, because I'm going to put some candles on the tables. And it'll search through your assets. The more assets you have, the longer it'll take. But in this case, it wasn't that long. So I'm going to drag this candle into the shortcuts. And then I want to look at a hatch, see if there's a trap door. So here's a hatch that's closed, and then here's a hatch that is open and closed. So I might use both of these actually. Hatch, shock bolt, what's this? Art kit, terrain objects. So I got a choice here. I think I'll use the closed one. So I'll put that in here. And then I might find a lantern. So the lantern is going to be sitting on the table in the other room. So I will take and put that on the table somewhere. So there's plenty of lanterns I have here. So I can put that on the one of the tables. So this is like decoration stuff. That should be it. I don't think I need too much more. Maybe a wall lantern. So here's a lantern from the asset packs. Yeah, so here's a lantern. I'll use that for like a hanging bullseye lantern. So there we go. So that is that. So what I'm going to do is take those assets and put them in the layer tool. This way I could decide where and how large the items are before I place them. So I'm going to start with the hatch, which is going to be like a secret door. So I'll drag and drop that into the tile area. It's a 1x1. So if I click here, it should fill this area. Yep, there it is. So this is going to be the hatch for this area. The only problem is I don't like the way this is facing. I think it should face this way. So if you've already placed something, you want to make sure you click the layer in the map here on the side where the layers are. And then you're going to make sure you select the item. Oops, I accidentally added another layer. Didn't want to do that. Okay, so I want to go to the selection tool. Select this item and then rotate it. There we go. So that looks better. They come around, they pull this up, it rests against the wall, so that makes sense. Okay, so that's that. The other thing I can do is I can change the opacity, and the reason I'm doing that is so that it blends in with the existing artwork. So if you have it all the way up, it looks like it's placed there. I kind of like it to blend in a little, so that looks pretty good. When you turn down the opacity a little bit, it kind of gives you the impression that it's part of the map and not separate. So I like that kind of that look. So that's that. And now I'm going to change what I'm going to use. I'm going to go with the candles. So I'm going to drag and drop the candle, and then I'm just going to click on various areas where the candles might be. So there might be one here, and there might be one here, and one. Let's see. There's another occupied table. So there's one, and then one back here. And then for the other thing, for the big table, I was going to put that lantern. So I will take this lantern decoration, drag and drop it up here, and then click on this and see what we get. So there's the lantern. So those are the areas where I'm going to put light. And then that little hanging bullseye lantern, I'm going to drag and drop that. I'm going to put that on this back wall or somewhere over here, on this wall here. So I want to make sure that's kind of big. So I only want it to be 1 by 1. And I'm going to click in this square here and see what happens. Yeah, that's perfect. It's hanging off this wall. So that makes sense. Now I'm going to go to the lighting tool. And I'm going to click on the candles, and a couple of them I have to adjust. So if I come over to the selection tool in layers, I can click on this candle and move it out of here. So I want to move this candle. So I want to make sure I have it selected, which I do. And I'm going to move it. And then I want to take off the snap to grid. That way I have more freedom. I don't have to worry about it moving. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. So this one's going to go here. This one's fine where it is, but if I wanted to, I can click on it and move it over. So this way, it's not like everything's in the same spot. Like this one might be a little bit too close to the food, so I might move that more to the center. So there's all kinds of really cool little tricks you can do to make this better. So now that I have those placed, I want to go to the lighting tool and add light. So the first light I'm going to add is Candlelight. So I want to go to the behavior and the type. So here's candles, and I want to click on each one of these candles so they have their own. So if I click away from this, it's not going to select anything in particular. But if I click on one of these candles, then it's going to give me the actual candle that I want to put it on. But in this case, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to have them all on the same layer. So, but you can assign the light to the individual token. In this case, though, I'm just going to have one layer for all the candles. So I'm just going to click where the candles are on the tables. And then there's one up here. I think that was it. So those will be on a layer. So I'll just call those candles. So you can turn off the lighting all at once. And then there's going to be another layer. So if I click away from anything and it'll make another layer, I'm going to go with a lamp. And go ahead and put that actually over here in this back room. So that's going to be considered a lamp. And then I'm going to click on this lantern here. So I'm going to go to lantern and click on that. So they all have their own layer. So there's lantern, and then there is the back room light. I'll call it back room light. So that's light. So you label these so they're more organized. So now when you go back to play mode, which it defaults to if you lock it, you turn these things back on, and this is the ambiance that you're going to get with these kinds of things that they have in place here. So if he comes down, like for instance, this human woman comes down and she opens that door and walks in, she can see some of that, but see the shadow casting actually blocks that. So that wasn't a good use for that. So what I'm going to do is remove that off the table because it's blocking the light from around the table, which isn't what you want. So I want to go back to line of sight, and I'm going to double click on this shadow caster and delete it. And that opens that up so that it's not blocking the light. So when you come back here, this is what this should look like, which is right. So there you go. So the barrels look okay because they're blocking light. That's fine. But as far as the light on the table goes, we don't want that. So that's it. that's what I have for right now. So when you're done with that, you can lock it, close this out, probably bookmark it so you don't have to dig for it next time. So if I go back to my images area and go to the actual folder that I was working in, this is the Sleeping Giant Inn. What I can do is drag and drop this into the hotkeys. So that way I'm not looking for this again. And then you also can tell you have line of sight outside too. So if you bring the soldier out, you can see where the shadows are being cast from. So there's the shadow casters working. Yep, it's pretty cool. So there you go. That's basically how this goes. So if you're up on the rooftop, you would open this up, of course, but in this case you're not. So, but if you go back here underneath here, it'd probably open it up. But there we go. So that's just a quick way to do that. I mean, I wouldn't say quick, but that's the process. And like I said, we put an asset in there. What we could do is key that later. So if let's say you found the secret door. Let's say he was snooping around and he found it. Oh, there's a secret door back here. So you can't really interact with that door. So what we'll do is put a pin there and maybe have it go to the Red Brand Hideout basement. So there's another map included in this set that is the Red Brand Hideout. So there's two versions. There's this really big map that's colorful and it's got more light to it. There's the hideout, so you can actually link this map to the basement, to wherever this, I think there's the staircases right here. So what you could do is link this map to that location. And then you can actually link this map to the Red Brand Hideout so that you don't have to look for it again. So you can take this and link it here. So make it more convenient. And this would be like the next map that you would have to work on if you're going to run this. And there's an alternative version too. So if you didn't like that one, there's one that's a little bit darker and kind of spookier, a little bit more detail to it too. So this one is more of a darker. I kind of like this one better actually, but it is darker. So you have to figure out which one you want to use, because you can put the darkness with the line of sight, but I kind of like the texture better, and it has more of a spookier kind of dark, dingy feel to it. So one of the things that I forgot to do on the Sleeping Giant Inn was in the back area, there was this water pool back here. I don't think it's going to be that important, but you could essentially put some water effect in here. So I wanted to show you how to do that. So this is like a mud puddle or like a pond back here. So what I want to do is just kind of make a little area for effect. So I'm going to click on the Add Effects layer, and then I want to take and double click, call this water, and then I will go up to the effects and drop this down into the water tool. And what you'll notice is it covers a whole map. So you want to put a mask on it first, and then just hold down the Alt key and trace around where you want the water to show up. And then you're going to get that illusion of movement. And then you can blend in the edges. You can turn down the speed a little bit so it looks more like rippling instead of a wobble. And then if you wanted to show depth, like more depth in here, you can use a color tool and darken this area up or whatever you want to do. But I think that subtlety there is good enough. So if anyone ends up going out that back door, they open it up, they notice there's no staircase because it's all just rotten. And it over here is the pond. So it's probably really damp back here, and that rotted that porch out because there's parts of it right there. So anyways, that's all I have. So you guys have a good weekend. Enjoy the rest